Welcome into Forward Progress here on the Hammer Betting Network, powered by Pinnacle Sportsbook. It's a Week 12 recap and a look ahead to Week 13 as we will pull up the Pinnacle odds board once Week 13 lines get posted and give our early thoughts. Rob Pizzola, joined by Clive Bixby as usual. And Clive, I would say today, interesting day of football, not the greatest 1 o'clock slate, but let's talk about the game that just finished right now. Bills and Eagles. Pretty solid game all around. Yet I sit here asking myself, trying to figure out, how did the Bills lose this game?
Well, there's that. And you talked about like a painful slate of 1 o'clock games. Like, this is the one golf shot that keeps you back every round, like when things suck. Like, this was the game that's like, all right, this is why I watch every Sunday, because I'm hoping for this kind of stuff. Totally just a great game. I don't know how the Bills continue to find ways to lose these games when they could be going out and winning them. I don't know. I don't have another way to say it. They're not charging. They're not there, but they're in much better positions to win these games than the outcomes consistently occur.
Yeah, like Dylan says it in the chat in the early going here. Eagles gave up 505 yards and won. What a joke. And I get that. The Bills won the turnover margin. We can't say this week was like all Josh Allen's fault. He had the one interception, which great read by James Bradbury. But I honestly don't even know. Like it always felt to me personally like the Eagles were going to find a way to come back and win the game. Because early on, there was like a portion of the game where the Eagles just couldn't get anything going offensively. And it was like the Bills need to capitalize more than they're doing right now. But 59-yard field goal to end regulation to force overtime on what was like the most galaxy brain Eagles drive ever as well. I don't know what they're doing, running the ball. That the 3rd and 17 play was like a debacle. Yet here we are. And I agree with Patrick. Like Patrick, Scott, everyone in the chat. Josh Allen was good today. He was very good. Look at some of these plays he made with his feet. He was scrambling. It was real Josh Allen stuff. But
he shouldn't have to need to be perfect to win these games. And you keep letting a team like the Eagles hang around, and Jalen Hurts made some good throws and made some strong plays. And like, just what turned it should have been the Bills getting closer to that wild card spot. And now that, this was a game they couldn't let get away, and they did.
I know they have a bye week next week, and then I believe they follow that up with Kansas City. It's a tough schedule for them going forwards. Patrick, the real MVP, was making me take the +3.5, or was me taking the +3.5. Anyone who got in there, I got about 1 million messages at once when the overtime started, which were, if the Bills kick a field goal here, can I lose my bet? To which I responded to everyone, no, because the Eagles wouldn't kick the extra point if they scored the touchdown. But just an absurd game, and another game where the Bills will go into the locker room afterwards and be like, how the hell did that happen? And as a Cowboys fan, it's sickening for me because I felt Dallas division was still very live. But I mean, like, this is such a great comment by Eric. How do the Falcons and Bills have the same record? I couldn't tell you. But they do.
So, like, talking about firing things into the sun, can we just like send the NFC South to Europe or something and just like move them out of the league? Because watching them every week is driving me crazy. Like, the best week I think I enjoyed was when they were on a bye week. Derek Carr, terrible.
Oh my God.
Watching that Falcons Saints game, any bit of it was just so bad.
It truly was. But there was a lot of bad football today. We will cover all that. We will look ahead to next week. Before we do, Clive, let's start. You get to pat yourself on the back for something every week. We're not going to go overboard and pat ourselves on the back for a million things every week. But start it off here. Pat yourself on the back. What'd you get right this week?
I mean, 49ers team total that we gave out for, Turkey Day, Thanksgiving. That was nice. That win happened a little bit later in the game than I expected after the first half, but that was a good one. The other one was that I thought we'd get a good offensive showing in Jacksonville and Houston. I didn't win the total. I didn't win the over. I had 46, but it was a decent enough game to watch. There should have been more points there. Um, those are probably the two things I was right about. I was wrong about a lot, though, otherwise.
Well, we'll get to that shortly. For me, the thing that felt really good was lumping the Bengals in with like the Panthers and Giants type of scenario in terms of their market rating. I had a pretty big bet on the Steelers today. And obviously, if you know me, for those who are in here, there's 150 live viewers right now. There's going to be people listening after the fact. You know that I think what I think of the Steelers, generally speaking, which is not much. We knew they were a team that, consistently gets outgained on a weekly basis. So a lot of people just scratching their heads today, looking at that number. How are the Steelers favored? Well, not only are the Steelers favored, but they dominated the game today. The Steelers had 421 net yards of offense to the Bengals 222. Bengals couldn't run the ball. They barely had the ball for the majority of the game. The only thing that didn't make this seem that much worse is that the Steelers had 4 red zone trips and they only scored 1 touchdown. So I will pat myself on the back for that one. There was a portion of the game where I was like, God damn, I can't believe I bet this Steelers team. I cannot believe I did this. But as soon as they got that lead, it really felt like a basically insurmountable lead for Jake Browning, who, by the way, that 222 net yards of offense, if you watch that game back for the Bengals, like 150 of that came off of tipped passes. I don't know how every tipped pass the Steelers had or deflected pass went directly to a Bengals receiver, but that was an annihilation. That doesn't look like an annihilation when you see the final score of just, 16-10 in that game, Clive.
Yeah, I don't know if that's I'm not going to say that this was, oh, thank God they got rid of Matt Canada. I don't know that was necessarily it. I mean, with all the yards and everything, I think, they still have the same struggles of getting the ball in the end zone. Browning, of what I saw, I mean, he didn't look like the worst quarterback that I ever saw, but he certainly didn't look good. You noted the 2 tip passes that went for big yardage early. It was just it was a slog of a game. But it's a game that you expect Pittsburgh to win, right? Like, that's the style that they would want to play. And, I think that was one of the probably the better bets that I walked away from that I should have made this week that I didn't.
There's a recap in the chat, and people are saying what they got right and what they didn't this week. But Scott's recapping our last week. And one of the games was the New England-New York Giants, where I said I love the -3 opener. Clive, you said you think it closes 4+. And that's going to lead us into our next segment here, which is what did we get wrong? But essentially us calling ourselves morons. And Clive.
Yeah. Well, let me start here. Not a big loss, but I mean, there weren't too many overs today. There were a few. I had the Rams Cardinals under 46, and that looked like it was going to get smoked super, super, super early. It actually had a shot still in the fourth quarter, but the market agreed with me. However, you still play the games, and Stafford had pretty much whatever he wanted today. Kyron Williams looked like he was the best running back that's ever put on pads. And the Cardinals were terrible on defense. They didn't show up at all. And I mean, that was probably what I was most wrong about.
Okay. I mean, it's a cop-out, but I have to go with the Pats here. It's supremely frustrating. As bettors, we're conditioned to want to get the best numbers possible. But we are also conditioned in some ways to believe that when we beat the close, we've done our job. Right? I did not do my job with New England today. I got a good number. I beat the close. They were never remotely close to being able to cover even the early 3 in that game. The situation is beyond a dumpster fire at this point. Like, it's painful. Mac Jones first half. How do these guys, like Mac Jones, when I watch these interceptions that the Patriots throw on a weekly basis, how do they throw into like triple coverage off of their back foot? I don't understand how some of these interceptions happen. The Mac Jones one, I don't think it was quite on the edge of the red zone, but it was third down, or not in the red zone, but on the edge of the red zone that ultimately got him benched. Just an absolute disaster. And the Giants did nothing again, Clive. Nothing. Tommy DeVito had a good first drive of the game. If you look at the offensive metrics for the Giants today, they had 10 first downs in the entire game. They had 220 net yards in the entire game. Tommy DeVito took 6 sacks again today after taking 9 against Washington last week. Yet we could not get any offense. And then the final drive of the game, the Patriots just go into like full limp dick. We're going to kick this field goal mode as if it's an auto. I can't do it. Like I need to actually quit this team. I need to quit this team permanently.
I don't know what we don't know in terms of what Bill Belichick's motivations were today, but just settling at that spot, it was almost like you were playing for a tie, period. Not just to get to overtime. You were playing for a tie, period. You actually had them on the ropes, running the ball reasonably well, that drive and maybe the drive before, if I'm sequencing it correctly. Try and score a touchdown. Your team sucks. Like, what do you have to lose by being not even like aggressive's not the word, just even like a moderate amount of urgency?
It's so absurd to watch. Like it's surreal to me that us as fans, like we can all watch the game and know that certain things should happen, but the coaches on the sideline don't. And it sounds very arrogant and, I sound conceited when I say stuff like this, but it just feels to me like the idiocy goes to a whole new level sometimes. And that game was just too much, man. It was like Ramondre Stevenson, guys picking up yards on the ground. Hey, maybe we should just continue to pound the rock instead of throw down. Like it seems so absurd. It's like I was living in a dream watching that game. It was like I was living in a dream.
I'm so glad that I did not put money. I just couldn't get myself to do it with the Patriots, even at 3.5 earlier in the week. I thought the line would go this way. I couldn't do it. Now, did I expect that end game that happened? No, but geez, like really, really, really hard to watch. That was a tough 1:00 slate for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, like I lost the Houston over in the 1:00 slate, right? And I lost it. I literally need another inch on the field goal at the end of the game, and it's 24-24 going into OT, and we're laughing, right? But I can say that when you're betting over on a high total, a lot of things have to go right, generally speaking. And sometimes that's just the type of game you get where you do have good offensive outputs. Both teams, over 6 yards per play, not a lot of sacks in the game, good series conversion rates. It felt like an offensive game, but it happens. That kind of stuff I can deal with. The stuff that's just mind-numbingly bad, there's 32 NFL head coaching jobs on the planet. And you look around the league and you see who has these 32 jobs. And I see DJN options in the chat saying maybe it's by design, as a joke. I know there's some people who actually think that out there, but it's not. The Patriots are not going out and tanking these games. They're not. The players are playing. The players are playing the game. You think Mac Jones wants to get benched at the half? You think the coaching staff is going out and being like, hey, Mac, guess what? Throw a couple interceptions. No, he's playing for his future in the NFL, as is Bailey Zappi, as is everyone else. It's not even a tanking thing. It's just sheer incompetence.
Between the clock management, the aggressiveness, there's so many decisions that I just don't understand. And I don't know how Bill Belichick has a lot of rope, like if he wants it, I get that. But some of the other coaches, they should have a lot less and they still get to make the same mistakes week in and week out.
I think Belichick might ultimately actually end up with another franchise at some point. the Commanders seem the most likely to me. And I think that would be a monumental mistake if that happens. I
From
think
Belichick's
somebody's going to.
perspective or the Commander's perspective?
I think Belichick is cooked, man. Like completely cooked.
Well, the edge that he had in terms of coaching and aggressiveness and defense is just not there anymore. Like, the league is caught up to him. He had Tom Brady. He doesn't have Tom Brady anymore, clearly. I don't even know what he would do with a mid quarterback right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. It's tough. There was a lot to watch today, but ultimately, I will say the 1:00 slate, while disastrous in terms of like quality of play, was actually mildly entertaining because of the amount of games that did come down to the wire and some good endings in those games. The late slate, we got the Philly Buffalo. We got Scott Hansen in red zone headquarters. Give the man a Medal of Honor for what he went through today.
Baby.
The alarms were going off. He didn't want to leave. Like, just give him whatever it is, the purple ribbon, Nobel Peace Prize, whatever awards you can hand at this guy for the commitment to the job was absolutely absurd. What a hero. Legendary performance by Scott Hansen today. Also, the Octobox off the start of the show today, I tried to predict on Pizza Buffet this morning what it would be. I thought it was going to be Scott Hansen and the control room. It was because there was only 6 early games for the Octobox. It was the 6 games. Scott Hansen, the most selfless guy, doesn't even put himself in the Octobox. He puts the control room and the research room where there's 2 guys that are feeding him stats over the course of the show. Applause for Scott Hansen.
I'll give him that.
People behind the scenes get some love today, plus the dedication to his job as well. Absolutely.
Respect.
Dedicated dude. We're going to get into our week 13 look ahead here. Before we do, we got like 40 something likes right now, 175 people watching in real time. Make sure you smash that like button down below. Goes a long way in helping people find this content in real time, which is extremely important. A lot of you listen on Monday after the fact, and totally acceptable. If you can't listen live on Sunday or you just want to watch Sunday Night Football, you can do whatever you want to do. But you'll often notice the lines have moved and things of that nature. So if we can help more people find this content in real time, the better off it's going to be in the long run. For those who are unfamiliar, we're going to pull up Pinnacle as they're opening up the lines right now. I've been betting with Pinnacle for many, many years. The beautiful thing about betting with Pinnacle, especially as we do this show, and this is no BS, you can bet openers anywhere at any sports book. But guess what? You go bet it at a recreational sports book and the line moves. New England -3 closes 4.5. Guess what? There's a trader reviewing your account and saying, maybe we're not going to give this guy the biggest limits on openers next time around. That's not going to happen at Pinnacle. Everyone's treated the exact same way. So bet smart, bet Pinnacle. If you're in Canada, use code HAMMER when signing up. It goes a long way. And I know it sounds like a sales pitch because it is, but it's actually the honest to God truth. And it's one of the reasons why I love endorsing a product like Pinnacle Sportsbook. All right, let's get into it, Clive. You ready to go?
Let's rock.
Let's see what interesting matchups we got for next week. And we'll start with Thursday Night Football. I already know what the Thursday Night Football matchup is because my Dallas Cowboys are playing on Thursday night. They're hosting the Seattle Seahawks, coming to town off of a shellacking at home to the hands of the 49ers on last Thursday Night Football. Current market at Pinnacle Sportsbook right now, Cowboys laying 7.5. Total in the game is 46. I'll start with you on this one, Clive. I have some immediate thoughts, but I'm not quite sure how the market values Seattle right now. They got faded pretty heavily in that game against the 49ers for the entirety of the week. Late buyback on Seattle from some heavy hitters, but ultimately one-way action on San Fran. We know that Dallas tends to beat up these bad teams. I feel like Seattle is being priced very low in this game, like very poorly, maybe one of the lower market ratings of the year.
Yeah. So I was low on Seattle as of the last 2 weeks anyhow. So now I think the market is kind of where I was. So I don't know that I see a ton of value in Seattle. The total's interesting around 47. Um, when Seattle's had tests from offenses that are very good and methodical, 30-point plus games continue to pop up. Geno Smith doesn't look particularly good himself either. So this is one where I think this game could really get away from Seattle too. I don't know that the market's going to move that much, but I don't really even have a lot of interest in Seattle at 7.5.
So I don't know where Seattle's going to go because you do have the Geno Smith arm injury as well. So there's a lot to take into account here. I agree with your assessment. Whenever the Seahawks defense has stepped up in class, they've got shredded. Dallas at home this year seems to be just destroying everyone, putting up points big time on everyone. Now, they're coming off a Washington game. Washington's defense is definitely much worse than Seattle's overall. But I definitely think that the line is more likely to close at 7 than it is for this to be bet out a lot further. That's my first thought on this overall. Second thought, I do have like an initial gut feeling that I like the over here because of the way that these Cowboys home games have played. But my big concern would be Seattle coming out and trying to just run the ball heavily, because we've seen teams be able to exploit Dallas's defense in the running game. And I could see them with some long, painful drives with no red zone success either. So ultimately, this is a tough one for me to handicap, but 46 does seem a little bit light to me with what I think the Dallas offense is capable of capable of at home. And you look at the last 5 weeks since the bye week, here are the point totals in Cowboys games: 63, 51, 59, 43. That was a 33-10 win at Carolina, and then 55. So they've been regularly playing some pretty high point totals lately, Clive.
Yeah, and I might look to do what I did with San Francisco this week, where I don't necessarily have a lot of trust in Seattle's offense to help me get to the over. I might just look at Dallas's team total over this week too.
Yeah, that might not be a bad idea. I'm just looking at general market power ratings as the year has gone on here. And like between weeks, let's say 6 and 11 in the NFL, I'm almost certain Dallas would have been priced under a touchdown in this game at any one of those weeks.
For sure. I think probably more like 5.5 to 6 was probably the most common line you would have got with these two teams. And I think Seattle's now, they had a pretty fortunate early schedule, and now they're going through the hard part. They got Dallas, San Francisco, Philly, and Pittsburgh, 4 of their last, 6 games. Yep. They're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yep. I'm with you. All right. We'll move on to the Sunday games here. Before we do, I just want to get to some comments from the chat from Joe Costantino. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. So Joe's talking about the fact that there looks like, if you're looking at advanced weather models, there's a high chance of precipitation in some of the East Coast games next week. From my own personal experience, I would never look on Sunday night for the following Sunday. Everyone's free to do whatever they want to do. You might find value in that. But even if you were to ask a meteorologist what the likelihood is of being able to predict 1 week in advance for that exact time, they're going to tell you that the amount of variance in that forecast is super high. And the market is almost never going to move off that on a Sunday night or even a Monday, unless it's like a sequence of days where the weather looks terrible. So I just want to throw that out there anyways. Josh says wind is more impactful than rain anyways. He is not wrong, but in torrential downpour, throw that out the window, because there's some very, very low scoring games in torrential downpour as well. All right, let's move on here. Seems like the Chargers are moving on to a field goal attempt. I don't know what the hell I'm just watching here in the background, but we'll keep this forward looking. Because, we'll keep it forward looking. Next Sunday, the Lions, coming off of a pretty embarrassing performance on Thanksgiving, losing at home to the Green Bay Packers, they head out on the road to take on the New Orleans Saints. Lions are 3.5-point favorites on the road. Total is 45. In today's games, there were very few injuries or significant, impactful injuries. The New Orleans Saints were the team that I was watching out for. Chris Olave left the game with a concussion. Rashid Shaheed also got hurt in the game. Michael Thomas is on IR. That's receiver 1, 2, and 3. What does the Saints depth chart look like at receiver? If you get rid of those guys, A.T. Perry, Lynn Bowden, Keith Kirkwood become 1, 2, 3. So I see New Orleans taking some early money here. And normally I would be inclined to agree that I think 3.5 is maybe a little bit too much. But with those injuries, there's absolutely no chance I'm betting the Saints in this game. This would, in my opinion, be a very low point for Detroit if all three of those receivers are out.
Derek Carr was not good today. I mean, I saw Taysom Hill get the ball and finally looked like they were about to drive in the red zone, and then he fumbles the ball away anyway. Like, they can't get into the end zone. This is going to be just a rough spot for the Saints without Olave. Throwing Shaheed too, and it gets even worse. I'm not a big bounce back guy or anything like that, but the Saints are not a good football team, really.
Yeah, I'm with you. So let me make it explicitly clear. I can understand why the Saints are getting better right now in real time, because this game would never have been priced this way at any point this season. Okay? So somebody who's looking purely at the way the market has priced Detroit and New Orleans over the course of the entirety of the year, you would never, ever, at any point in the season, get Detroit minus 3.5 at New Orleans. With that said, extra rest for Detroit, healthier with the amount of injuries the Saints accumulated today. And I think the market just generally overprices New Orleans. Like, they suck. They stink.
Yeah, they're like a probably -0.5, -1, to average, and they keep getting priced like at neutral or even slightly above. And I don't get it. Like, hope is not an effective strategy.
No. I mean, in fairness, the Saints did move the ball well today. They just got back to, we're not going to score in the red zone again like they did early in the year. Like, that was the MO for New Orleans in the first month of the year. Move the ball, can't score in the red zone. Okay, then what did they start doing? They started running Taysom Hill in the red zone a lot more. He got hurt too today, by the way. They started running him a lot more. And guess what happens? They enter the red zone 5 times today. How many TDs they score? 0. And Derek Carr throws like a brutal interception for a touchdown as well early in the game. So if the market is going to bet New Orleans down here, I would be very happy to bet Detroit at 3, if that's the case, with the injury upside.
And from a sharp book perspective, we're getting some conflicting, if my line screen is correct right now, getting some contrasting line moves here. So I think the market will probably play the Saints. It does make sense. I can't bring myself to do it. This is kind of like with the New England Patriots today, not as extreme. Whereas I think the number will go in a certain direction, but I just don't think I could bring myself to do it. I think I'm going to wait for Detroit and then jump on them.
I'll be honest too. Like, to me, the New Orleans wide receiver injuries today were very unfortunate, because I would have loved the over in this game between New Orleans and Detroit. At this price, I would have loved the over. New Orleans' defense is way overrated. Way overrated. If you look at the quality of let's go through New Orleans' schedule this year. They've played Tennessee, Carolina, Green Bay, Tampa, New England, Houston in week 6 was their first test. Jacksonville in week 7 was their second test. And then they went Indy, Chicago, Minnesota, Atlanta. Like, they have played horrible quarterbacks. this year. I have very high confidence that Detroit is going to score. Good field, like you don't have to worry about weather, good conditions. And I think the Lions defense is terrible as well. So
I don't know
it
that
makes it a little challenging.
I don't know that the market has necessarily adjusted properly to these NFC South teams because their strength of schedule has been so weak that I just don't know that everything's being accounted for properly.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Yeah, just a little bit unfortunate with the way that the injuries panned out, I think, for this particular game, because Detroit already at an inflated price, in my opinion, but I don't want to bet New Orleans without their top 3 receivers. And I don't have any interest in the over anymore without New Orleans having potentially their top 3 receivers. That's not to say that they're out, but that's just notes from today. And things can get worse from that perspective. It can't really get much worse for this next game. It's the New York Jets at home, off of one of the most embarrassing performances of the season, taking on an NFC South team, the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons open 2.5, minus 110 on the road. Total in the game, 35. I mean, what do we do here, Clive? Like, honestly, what do we do?
I mean, like, should the Falcons be road favorites versus anybody? Like, really? Like this is just another team that's in probably the bottom third of power rankings, and the Jets are just happen to be worse right now. What's the total? What did we have there?
35. 35 was the total.
I guess I mean, I don't even know if I can take the Jets in a teaser.
I honestly, like, the Jets in the teaser makes perfect logical sense from like a pure Wong teaser, get through 3, get through 7, low total. But the actual variance in Jets games is absurdly high. Like, if the Falcons won by double digits on the road, I'm not surprised whatsoever. It's
right.
This is gonna sound insane, what I'm about to say. If Zach Wilson was starting for the Jets in this game, I actually probably would click the money line or the plus 2.5 on the Jets. I actually think Tim Boyle is worse, but not only is he worse, he's worse in the sense that it's clear the coaching staff also has zero belief or faith in him to do anything. Like, whatever that game plan was against Miami, just throw that one directly over the shoulder into the dumpster and never bring it out again.
Like, they had a plan. Like, they knew he was starting. They had a plan. This was not like when DeVito went in, for Daniel Jones getting hurt. Or, I'm sorry, Tyrod Taylor. Shit, all the Giants quarterbacks got hurt. But the point is, right, like, DeVito had no practice reps likely, and they gave this very, very super conservative game plan. They had a game plan for Miami, and that's what they went with. Like, it was ugly as sin. This feels like a Jets team total under scenario, and just leave it at that. Like, they're not going to open up the playbook for this guy.
Yeah. So this feels like a game that the Jets defense can win. So
maybe
from a pure market perspective, what way do I think this is more likely to go? I think Atlanta's more likely to get bad. Okay. Personally, because you're just coming off of a performance, like an epically catastrophic, terrible performance. It was like I was watching Bruce Willis in Armageddon, basically. That's how bad the performance was by the New York Jets.
That's rough. I want to see success rates, because I don't remember the success rates from Timmy Boyle on Friday.
Do you know what Desmond Ridder is dying to do on a weekly basis?
Fumble?
He's dying to give the game away on a weekly basis. He was dying to do it again today. He has that about him. He has like a little bit of Jameis in him, except he's not good. Or never
he's
was.
No upside.
Like limited upside. He's just dying to give the game away. Now, the Atlanta offense was good today because they ran the ball at will against the Saints front. But
they realized they had Bijan Robinson too, and they actually used him.
For sure. And you know what they're going to do next week because that game plan worked? They're just going to do it all over again. And Ritter's going to throw a couple horrific interceptions, and the Jets defense is going to show up to play. I don't really know what to do here, but I think the early market might take this to 3, and then I'm going to have a serious conversation with myself on whether or not I play the Jets, because I don't want to lay Atlanta. I don't. At least not right now. I can look deeper into it. I only watched about 2/3 of the Dolphins-Jets game. I was in and out of sleep on the couch, just like, put anyone to sleep. The lone
that was not a fun game to watch. Like from Friday till 4 p.m. today, it was not a.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough, just like Clive's internet connection. He'll be back with us momentarily. Patrick, thank you for reminding me about Tim Boyle. I'm going to need a lot of people to DM me over the course of this week just to remind me not to do stupid things. I would have appreciated that with New England this week. I wouldn't have listened, though, to be completely honest with everyone. I don't think I would have listened. But that's a tough one. Moving on. Wow, like you want to talk about lines I never thought I'd see in my life. Here we go, people. The Pittsburgh Steelers return home, where they are laying 6.5 points to the Arizona Cardinals. 6.5 points. Steelers at home to the Cardinals. Total in the game, 39.5. I have thoughts. I liked what I saw out of Pittsburgh today. I liked what I saw out of the offense post Matt Canada. I love how Kenny Pickett was using Pat Freiermuth. I get all that. How am I not going to bet Arizona in this game?
When you watch, I don't know how much of the Rams-Cardinals game you saw today. When you saw what Kyron Williams did and what Matt Stafford did, you might rethink like that.
Yes. So, caveat. I bet the Rams today. I liked the Rams today.
Mm-hmm.
Love the rushing matchup. Loved Stafford. I love Stafford against bad zone defenses. That's what that's his MO. You put Stafford against a bad zone defense, he carves
with no pass rush, and he will just pick it apart.
Right. You said pick it apart, almost like it was a Pickett, reference to this game.
Pickett
ain't picking anything apart for the most part. Now, they can run the ball now, the Steelers. I'll give them that. They use Broderick Jones in very creative ways, having him pull along the line of scrimmage a lot, whatever. But this is a big number for Pittsburgh, man. We've gone a long way on the Steelers. Like this team, they're likely getting Minkah Fitzpatrick back. I have to point that out as well. It's important. But I don't know, anyone out there with the look aheads, please. I need to know what this was. Because honestly, I think maybe if this game was played this week, it would have been Pittsburgh -3.
That's what it was.
And we're at 6.5. It was 3?
Yeah, it was 3.
Okay.
No, it's too much.
I mean,
listen, you're not wrong.
Dude,
I can't argue that. It's just
Clive, 2 weeks ago, Arizona went to Houston, and they were a smaller underdog than they are at Pittsburgh next week. This cannot be. I'm sorry, it cannot be. It can't. I think we might have lost Clive again tonight. Dog chewing through the internet cord. I don't want to say pound Arizona it's openers. You can't really like pound it generally, but it's too much. One way or another, Jerry, I honestly don't care about the opening market because people are going to sniff out these. If it's not me, someone's going to sniff out the fact that this is not a great price. It's going to happen. This is just generally how markets work. Early betting, low limits, drives it into place, and it's okay. I bet Tuesday through Friday through the week, and it's fine for me. I'll do okay with that, even if this number gets bet. So, Mickey, you say, I'll wait for 7. If it goes back to 6, so what? There's lots of scenarios where the 6 doesn't even appear. It just gets, because of all the early money, it just moves right away through that. So you have to weigh that as well. I don't see this getting to 7. I do not see it getting to 7.
No, I don't see it getting to 7 either. And it is just not my day with the internet. I don't get it. I'm hardwired in. Anyway, it's too big of an adjustment. Like, I don't know what we think the Steelers all of a sudden have become. It's just too much.
So in the same vein, though, like Pittsburgh should be able to run the ball in Arizona. The total's 39.5. If this is not a bad weather game, does that not seem a little bit low to you?
It does, especially with the ineptitude of the Cardinals defense. This feels like this should be on the other side of 41 in my mind. There's no injury on the Cardinals today that I'm missing. Was there?
In terms of significance, I don't have anything noted. Same with Pittsburgh. I mean, Arizona, I was a little bit upset because I thought Marquise Brown was going to miss the game for them today. He ended up playing. They have some injuries on defense, but like nothing new showing for them today. Looking at Pittsburgh as well, same deal. I didn't note anything as well there. So it's just like clean bill of health for both teams out of this week's game.
Yeah, and now the market's already moving on this game. So if you like 6.5, hurry up, grab it now.
Yeah, it's not going to last, man. It's just not. There might, I mean, yeah, I just don't see it. I just don't see it. What have we learned in the span of a week with Arizona? Yeah, they can get blown out in a game. It can happen. Sure, they put in a stinker at home, but to make Pittsburgh a bigger favorite at home than Houston, I think is egregious, personally, especially for a team that almost never wins by margin.
So to that end, what do we think the number really should be? 4?
Yeah, in like
4.5?
4. Yeah, even if I'm not high on Arizona. I don't like them very much.
It's not that
as a team. But even like if I'm using my pure like raw number from this week, yeah, I'm in that range. And of course, you have to give Pittsburgh some credit for the box score beatdown today. You got to give them some credit for that. But it is what it is. It is what it is. All right, we'll keep it moving. Clive is in and out here, but we'll get him back in here momentarily. I don't know what's going on in New Jersey, but you hardwire the internet in New Jersey. It doesn't have the same effect as hardwiring the internet everywhere else in the world. AFC South matchup. Titans get their win today at home to the Indianapolis Colts. Next week at home to the Indianapolis Colts. Today at home to the Carolina Panthers. So Colts -2 on the road. Total is 42.5. Tennessee's win today, whatever. They went 2 for 11 on third down. They had 264 total yards of offense. By no means impressive against the Carolina Panthers. Let's call it out for what it is. Carolina sucks. Carolina's had 5 games since the bye week. They haven't been able to average 4 yards per play in any single one of those games. They suck. What are we taking away from that? Nothing. Now, are the Colts deserving of being favorites on the road? I don't know. They did everything they could to possibly let Tampa Bay back into the game today. Tampa shot themselves in the foot many times. Number feels fine. Feels fine. I just don't really have like a strong opinion. If anything, I could see Indy getting bet all the way up to 3 just because we're in like this dead zone. I would be surprised if Tennessee goes off as favorite. So more likely, I would say Indy gets bet. They're the only team in this matchup that seems they have like some sort of life. I'm just wondering if this is another over game for the Colts, back-to-back weeks. They had a good matchup this week because there were some big injuries on the Tampa Bay defense. The Tennessee defense is a pass funnel. We know that. Is Indy going to like abandon the running game to pass the ball more? I don't want to say abandon, but I do have confidence in their coaching staff. Shane Steichen, Jim Bob Cooter. Seems to me like they'll be able to figure out the offense a little bit more. Clive back in here as well.
What the?
Painful
Apologies,
play and
everybody.
painful play today and painful Wi-Fi today as well.
Yeah. I don't think the Wi-Fi should be affected by the rain, but maybe it is.
Are you wearing a New York Giants hoodie right there?
Yeah, man. This is for Tommy DeVito.
That's probably what's causing the disconnects, I think.
It makes sense.
Indy
So what game
-2.
were we talking about?
Indy -2 at Tennessee. Total 42.5.
From what I saw from Indy today, I actually liked what I saw. I know Tampa Bay is not like, anything to write home about on defense, but I mean, I thought they played a relatively decent game today. And from as bad as Carolina played offensively, Tennessee should have absolutely like waxed Carolina, and that didn't happen either. I think this is probably a pretty fair number.
I think 42.5 might be a little bit low. And
here's
the thing for Indy. Let's go through Indy's schedule, right? Especially recently. If we look at the run of defenses they've played since like week 6 was Jacksonville. They went Jacksonville, Cleveland, New Orleans, Carolina, and then New England, Tampa Bay, which aren't terrible, not great. But they've been on a run of like some pretty good defenses overall. Yeah. I like their offense with Downs in there. They're an offense that will definitely they'll press it. They'll work on opposing defense's weaknesses. Let me put it that way. And Tennessee gives up like passing in bunt. Throw the Carolina game out the window today because Carolina doesn't move the ball against anyone. And I think maybe because of that, we get like a buy low on the over here.
I think that's reasonable. I mean, like in Indy's defense really isn't particularly good either. It's just a matter, I think Tennessee has had not a rough schedule, but I mean, who have they played recently? They have Baltimore week 6, bye week, Atlanta, Pittsburgh, decent, Tampa Bay, Jacksonville, decent. I mean, Levis, if you liked him, he's definitely turned into a pumpkin. He hasn't been particularly good, but maybe this is a defense where he can move the ball a little bit. I don't like the under at this number. I just don't know how much more it's going to move.
Yeah, fair point. I think maybe just based off of where the market is valuing these teams, maybe it doesn't get bought towards the over. Levis is a very unknown quantity. He's getting worse and worse. I think like that whole excitement period we had with him is done. But the Colts defense is not very good. I really don't think so. If Juju Brents is out at corner again next week, there's opportunities there. I'd love if Treylon Burks could be back for the Titans because they don't have any like secondary explosion on offense, unfortunately.
So what does the Titans game plan then you think look like against the Colts? Because I don't think they're necessarily going to try and stretch the defense. I think they're just going to try and run Derrick Henry down their throat. How effective can they be?
I unfortunately agree with you. As I think about it, probably the look that I'm going to end up liking the most is Colts team total over.
So what would that be? 22 and a half?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I
think we're basically going to be like, again, I don't know if this is like the 5th time I've already said this. Throw the Tennessee Carolina game out the window from today. You don't learn anything off of that. You don't learn anything about Tennessee's defense. You don't learn anything about their defense because Carolina can't move the ball against anyone. And honestly, it was one of those games where Tennessee didn't even have to open up the playbook offensively. It was just like, this other offense sucks so bad, we can just do our thing. Be conservative, whatever. So that's that. Josh asks an interesting question. How often are you guys surprised by what your model says when you run it on Tuesday or whenever versus your thoughts on openers? I'll speak to that first, and then you can go ahead, Clive. For me, I generally have a good idea of where I'm going to land on a game. Sometimes I'm surprised, but generally I know what teams my model likes versus doesn't relative to market. And it's where we get into like a lot of injuries that are happening in a game or players returning from injury that I tend to not be able to accurately price that myself. But for the most part, a generally good idea. Maybe some people in the chat can help out with this. Scott, I know you make notes of this every week. Some other people do, but I don't think that there's very many times where I'm in on this show where I'm saying like, I think I'm going to like this a lot next week. And then I end up betting against that opinion. I would say it almost has never happened this season.
Yeah, and the one game that still sticks in my head that the line moved so hard against both of us was the Detroit-Seattle game, where that went in the complete opposite direction of what we expected. And now I'm wondering, if you look at Seattle the last few weeks, was the market completely way off and whatever. I don't see that many huge surprises. It actually happens every once in a while, more with NBA, but there's more games. Um, and there's also a lot more lineup uncertainty. So for the NFL, it doesn't happen a ton. Occasionally a total will move away that I don't expect it to, but it's not that common.
Yeah. I mean, it can happen where we're wrong. We are wrong often on this show.
Oh,
Like
sure.
we're never going to get every line move right. I kind of just try to predict what's most likely to happen if you're going to bet early and what's most likely going to happen by the end of the week. There's certain teams the market loves and doesn't, but in particular with my own model, I can't say what my final number is going to be till I run it, but I don't have I have a generally a good grasp on games or teams that I'm going to like versus ones that I'm not going to like. Let's keep it moving here. Miami Dolphins coming off of that impressive Friday win. Obviously, though, massive injury for them on defense and on offense as well. That's kind of gone under the radar. But defensively, they lose Jalen Phillips to an Achilles injury. He's going to be out for the year. Left tackle Teron Armstead also leaves the game. He's kind of got like a little bit of David Bakhtiari going with him right now, where he just cannot ever stay healthy for a lengthy period of time. They go to Washington to take on the Commanders. Commanders blown out on Thanksgiving by the Cowboys. Market in the game, Washington, 10-point underdogs at home, although that's like a 9.5 type of number with where the juice is. Total is 49.5, juiced to the over. Incredibly square first thought on this game for me is how is this game going to stay under the total? That's my first thought of the game.
So I thought that too. And then the next thought is, we've talked about this before, like a lot has to go right when you have these high totals too, right? So like if things do not go right, like right off the bat, you're kind of chasing. But Miami's defense I still don't have high hopes for it. And they're not as definitely not as good of a defense as Dallas. Like they're not even the same arena. Yet Miami's defense is priced better. So I not better than Dallas. What I'm trying to say is, I guess, I think Washington can actually move the ball against this defense. So I can't see myself betting the under. I just don't know how much room there is in terms of the market for this to go up. Like where does it cap? Does it cap out at 51, 50 and a half?
Yeah, so outdoor game in Washington in what's going to be early December. That in itself could have an impact, right? I'm not saying go out and bet the total, the early going here. I mean, I can't remember who it was in the chat earlier, Joe or whatever, that pointed out could be some weather games next week. He's totally right in the sense that you don't want to go out and fire an over early on a game for next week. With that said, Washington can't rush the passer. They play a lot of man coverage. which they did against Dallas this week and got shredded doing so. And by the way, Dak missed like even a few throws in that game, or it could have even been worse. Miami, Tua is going to kill this. Like, try to play man coverage. You thought it was tough to cover CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks and Michael Gallup and Jalen Tolbert. Good luck with Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, right? Like, I said last week I thought Dallas's floor was 30 on offense. I kind of feel like Miami's might even be higher in this game because they generate more explosive plays.
Yeah, I could see their median being at like 34, like in all honesty, like of what you should expect from them. So thinking about the total, it's a matter of if you think Washington can put it together and put some points on the board too, to race with Dolphins. But Dolphins could have some big explosive plays and score quickly.
Washington's offense, I think, is better than we give it credit for. I don't want to be like I disagree with Eric Eager on this sometimes as well. I think Sam Howell is better. Like, even though the output was 10 points on offense last week for Washington, Dallas's defense is generating a lot of pressure. I don't think Miami's is going to do that. I think this is a very different matchup this week. I just see like green light, unless I'm missing some sort of type of offensive matchup. I do think that this is like full steam ahead for the offenses. Washington's last 3 games in the 50s. Miami's been playing much lower scoring games as their defense has improved. Jalen Phillips being out is going to be a big deal for that defense, though.
Yeah, so New England, KC, Vegas, and the Jets are their last 4 games. So I don't want to overreact to, their defense being a little bit better. And their schedule overall has not been particularly difficult. They played the Chargers week 1, Buffalo, and Philly and KC are their only higher end offenses that they've played. I have no interest in the under right now. It's just a matter of, do I like the total enough, or do I want to take a team total?
Yeah.
The spread seems high though. Like, which way do you expect that to go?
I honestly don't know, but it does seem high to me as well. There's like a proclivity in market for a lot of the bigger home dogs to get bet. So you look last week, right? Miami and the Jets. All the early money comes in on Miami. That was a 7-point spread on the road at the Jets. And it ends up closing 9.5. Now we're basically pricing Washington in that same range. I give Washington's offense a much higher chance to score. Now their defense sucks, but they're like, Miami is going to move the ball on teams. That's just what they're going to do. I give Washington's offense a much higher chance of keeping them in the game. So, that's kind of, it feels subjectively a little bit high to me as well, considering where we closed last week and then Miami suffering a couple of key injuries in the game. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
And look, this is important. Big D has announced that the beef is dead. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't checked that on Twitter, but that's good news.
Big D. Oh, this is in reference to the episode of Circles Off a couple weeks ago, where he believes that I was trolling him or trying to teach him life lessons. I merely was pointing out to people out there, which I will continue to point out, don't chase bets after a losing day. He got very upset. I thought he was being very irrational. However, hopefully he's all good now. Hopefully he is. He is 6'3", 225. I didn't want him coming up to Bet Bash and punching me in the face. It's not what I was hoping for. Keep it moving here. Denver Broncos hit the road. The super sizzling hot Denver Broncos, who've gone on a run here in the second half of the season. They're 3-point dogs at the Houston Texans. Total in the game is 46. I'm looking for a spot to eventually fade the Broncos because I think that the way that they win games, Clive, is a little bit unsustainable. I don't want to say that it's just like all turnover luck because it's not. There's some, they force turnovers, they protect the ball. But at some point, this just cannot happen on a weekly basis. Happened again today, +2 in the turnover margin. They generated just 4.7 yards per play on offense. Everyone, you can tell, listen, I'm not here to slander Russell Wilson. I think he's had, he's rejuvenated his career. He's had a better year, but he's not being asked to do much. He's just being asked not to give away the game. Now, he's going to be asked to do a lot next week because he's going to face a very good quarterback on the other side of things.
He will have to put up points, and that offense will have to put up points against Houston. Initial look, I think I have to run some numbers, but instinctively, I already like an over on the total here. But the Broncos remind me of the Vikings last year in terms of how I think they're kind of winning games, like with a worse record, mind you, too. Like, I don't think they're particularly great on either side of the ball. I think they're very average, and yes, they are streaking, but I think this is as good a spot as any to fade them. I kind of wish we got a little bit better of a number here, obviously, but I don't have a lot of interest in Denver getting 3 on the road at Houston. And I like what I saw from Houston today.
Yeah, I generally just like Houston. CJ Stroud to me is like the real deal. And I think if it's not next year, I think within a couple years, we're going to be talking about him in like the elite tier of quarterbacks because he has the mobility to escape sacks. He keeps his eyes downfield. He makes throws. And Denver has done a much better job defensively in recent weeks. And I want to be careful with the words I use here. But they're not playing explosive teams. Like, they've played some good offenses. Week 6 and week 8, they played Kansas City in both those games, but Kansas City's not an explosive offense. Green Bay's not an explosive offense. Minnesota's not an explosive offense. Cleveland's not. This is a different test, personally, I believe. The issue I have with the over is I think that the Broncos are going to try. The Broncos don't try anything downfield. They're going to try to run the ball on Houston, which they might have a lot of success doing. There's going to be a lot underneath. Denver threw for 125 yards today. 125. People are crowning Russell Wilson like he's back. He's in this like elite tier of quarterbacks. He just doesn't have to make mistakes. And he made one on a scramble today. But I'm having trouble with this one. I was hoping for a better number on Houston. Let's put it that way.
Same. Yeah. I think this is actually, unfortunately, the right number. I don't know, that it's going to get to like a full 3.5 or anything like that. I mean, if you like, I think it's a little unfortunate. I was hoping with Houston loss, we might get just a slightly better number today.
Yeah. I'm just hoping I don't miss my spot to fade Denver because it's going to come at some point. But it doesn't seem like the market is like crazy overvaluing them yet. I mean, you could argue it's been the opposite, that they've been undervalued. You can argue that potentially. I honestly think 3 is fine. I do know my model likes the Texans, generally speaking. And I do know market likes the Texans, generally speaking.
They get bet every week. This was the first week that I think we didn't really get a really hard move in Houston's favor.
Just a small one.
Yep.
I think 3 is okay, honestly. I think it's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Keep on moving. Train kept the rolling. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Carolina Panthers. God, the NFC South.
Ugh.
It still exists. Tampa -5.5, -117. Juice towards 6. Total in the game, 38. I will not bet. I will not bet Carolina. You cannot get me to bet Carolina. You can't.
No. This number feels almost maybe like they haven't adjusted enough for Carolina being as bad as they are. I think Carolina might be the worst team in the NFL, and they're not being priced that way yet.
So I think that there's a decent chance that Carolina might get bet this week, and I'm going to explain why. But they activated both J.C. Horn and Jeremy Chin off of IR last week, and neither of them played. C.J. Henderson was out with a concussion. That's 3 players in the secondary that they are likely going to get back, or at least get a couple back. And I think the market will react to that. I do. I could be wrong. If that happens, and we at some point get some Carolina money, I'd love to click Tampa Bay, even to win by margin. I know a lot of people are going to say that, who's Tampa Bay to be laying these points? Carolina cannot score points. They cannot move the ball against any team. How many teams in a row do we have to see Carolina face where they cannot move the ball? I mentioned this off the top. I'm going to mention it again. 5 games since the bye week where they have not been able to average 4 yards per play in any single game. You can give them a pass for Dallas last week. You cannot give them a pass for Houston, Indy, Chicago, and Tennessee since the bye. They've had every favorable matchup, and they cannot move the ball. So we're going into week 13. You know what's going to happen next week? They're not going to move the ball. So it's just a matter of whether you think Tampa can score on this defense. I think Tampa's offense is average. It's good enough. If Tennessee can win by a touchdown at home to Carolina, I don't see why Tampa Bay can't.
Agreed. And Tampa Bay's offense is not like completely inept. They make some poor mistakes in terms of drops and things like that. Their play calling could be a little bit more beneficial to themselves, but I guess you have to probably think of the game script, and if Tampa Bay is going to try and just slog and run, then I could see them struggling to win by margin. I think if they actually open up the playbook and throw against Carolina, I think they will have more success than Tennessee even had today, and I like Tampa Bay. If people bet Carolina, I kind of could see myself betting Tampa Bay if it gets down to 4 or 4.5.
Yeah. Jerry's asking expectations for Tampa Bay's defensive back cluster injuries. They don't have cluster injuries in the secondary. They just have Jamel Dean out in the secondary. No additional injuries today. Jamel Dean out, Levante David out in the linebacking core. Is this going to change things for me? No. I mean, it changes things for me when they play a competent offense like Indianapolis today. It doesn't change much for me when they face Carolina, personally.
Yeah, like what's Bryce Young going to do? He looks awful. He looks lost.
I just like, yeah. Like, I don't know.
It's a game you can bet on.
Yeah, it's a game you can bet on. Let's put it that way. Okay. 49ers and Eagles. Here we go.
Oh, good matchup. Here we go.
49ers, 2-point favorites on the road. Totals 45.5, juice to the over.
So do you think that like these last 2 games that Philly has won probably should have lost both?
Yeah, I'm on like a lonely island with Philadelphia. So when I say that, I get that the defense isn't good. I get that they sometimes, I will say often, don't look the most convincing in games. I don't think this is like a Philly is a fraud type of situation.
No.
I honestly don't.
No, I actually think this is a fair number. And it might even end up 1.5. Like I think that's fine. It's just this might be a game that I bet without expecting market agreement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My thoughts. We've had like 3 situations this year. I guess 4, technically, if you consider today, where Phillies had like this tough home game, right? And San Fran might be the best team of this bunch. Don't get me wrong. But we had the Sunday night football game against Miami. They won that one. We had the game against the Cowboys. Came down to the wire. Don't get me wrong, but they won that one.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it wasn't a home game against the Chiefs, but they won that one. Buffalo at home, 3-point favorite today. They won that one. They've taken steps up in class this year, and they've won these games against other good teams. And we can say whatever we want. Game management by the other teams, don't like the game plan, whatever. There's a lot of things we can say. Ultimately, but they won these games. I personally love the 49ers. I think they're the best team in the league. I think the weakest unit on the field is going to be Philadelphia's defense. Do I think San Fran's defense can't be had? Nope. I think they can be had. I don't know where this is going to go because I've had a hard time pricing Eagles games all year. But where the Eagles are priced on the money line right now, I can tell you already that it at like plus 113, plus 115 in that range, that already feels appealing to me because I feel like this game's a coin flip.
I can see that. Now, as I'm looking through San Francisco's schedule as well, they haven't been particularly tested either. It's a little bit weaker than I remember. So they got good Burrow with Cincy. They struggled against Cleveland's defense, but other than that, they haven't really been particularly tested by a super strong offense. I think you're making a good point, and I think I'm rethinking my position.
I don't want to make you do that necessarily out there. Someone already mentioned that they like the offensive matchups, that this total should be higher. I might have missed it a little bit earlier. I say that about the 49ers pretty much every week, and they have this way of just not going over the total. And it would seem like they should. They hit a lot of explosive plays, and they just find a way to always stay under in like the most painful of margins. Now, they went barely over against Seattle last week, but I would agree that subjectively, it feels like a wide open game where I don't think that either of these definitely the Eagles defense isn't as good as people thought or think, but I also don't think the 49ers defense is either. I think
don't. That's where it is. Yeah, I don't think defensively the 49ers are as strong as how they're ranked in the market. They've been fortunate to play the Steelers, the Rams, the Giants, and the Cardinals the first 4 weeks. They obviously played very well against the Cowboys. That was really their one offensive test where they truly showed up. You can consider them and how they played against Jacksonville like a test too. I mean, Jacksonville is not a terrible offense in any stretch of the imagination either, but I'm kind of like hamstrung on the total here. I could see why people would like the over instantly, but it's not. That's not what I'm feeling right off the bat.
Another thing of note for this game in particular, there are some, I do like to make note of like some random things that I notice over time. And I have noticed over time that teams coming off of overtime games tend to get bet against the following week. I'm not sure if it's something or if it's nothing, but I just want to point that out there for people that I have picked up on that in past years. Games that go to overtime, those teams tend to get faded in the following week. Do we think playing the extra half quarter means a lot? I don't know. It could. A couple other games to get to on Sunday, and then we'll break down Monday Night Football as well. Once again, if you haven't smashed that like button, smash that like button down below. It's your first time here on Forward Progress, hit that subscription button. Goes a long way in helping us grow our channel. I agree with Ryan's comment here. Trent Williams' health is huge. That's the one thing with the 49ers this year is that they've been had when Trent Williams isn't on the field, and Deebo Samuel to some extent as well. But that's a big difference. Keeping it moving. Cleveland Browns are going to head out on the road to take on the LA Rams. Speaking of teams I didn't think that I would see favored by 5 points, that would be the LA Rams, who are -5, plus 100 at home. Totals 38.5. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be for the Cleveland Browns because DTR got absolutely obliterated by Baron Browning in what I thought was a clean hit, but what ultimately was called the roughing the passer penalty. Don't know if it's going to be him or PJ Walker. Don't know if Amari Cooper's going to play. I mean, honestly, but interchangeably, you could probably. I think Walker does a few more boneheaded things overall, which would surprise you because he's more veteran. He's a veteran, but yeah. I mean, the Rams showed today they can blow a team out, but like, holy shit! Like, again, I don't know what the look ahead was in this game. But if the Rams played the Browns today, the Browns just went on the road to the Broncos, and they were 1.5-point dogs today. They're going to be 5 at the Rams next week? 5? Like, I hate Cleveland. I want to bet against Cleveland as much as I can. But that's a big adjustment, Clive.
Yeah, -1. Like that's where we were at. Like Rams small home favorite. That's it. Now this is another big move that's just way too big. Now, did Cleveland show anything against Denver today? No, I think they looked better with, DTR than they did with PJ Walker. But other than that, I don't know that there's anything. This feels like a lot to ask, and it's not like the Rams are a great team.
Yeah. We got some commentary in here. DTR played a lot better than PJ Walker. I don't necessarily disagree, but it's like, would you rather dog shit or like horse manure if you need one or the other? And I guess maybe you prefer to eat dog shit to horse manure, but they're still both shit in some capacity, is what I'm getting at. Amari Cooper injured, took that shot to the ribs. Myles Garrett walking off gingerly. So there's a lot of injury stuff to process and take in here. It's not just like if they played today, it would have been 1. But crossing through 3 and 4 is very important in the NFL. So we'll have to see how this plays out. But I mean, basically the Browns are being priced as if they're the Cardinals. Are they? You make up your mind. They have a defense. That's the difference.
They do. I mean, Cleveland went from having a top 3 defense in terms of, probably market ratings. How much are you really bringing them down off of today's game? I know their offense puts them in shit situations, but still, like, it's still the Rams. And are the Rams really being overvalued here? I think so. I can't imagine that this be much more than 3.5, even with the situation that Cleveland's in. I know we have to look at injuries and things like that, but I mean, instinctively, this just seems way too high.
Yeah. The injuries are obviously the great equalizer here. I don't think there's going to be much market appeal if it's PJ Walker without Amari Cooper and without Myles Garrett. But even then, I think you're kind of just coin flipping if the number is going to be 5 in the game. Tough one. It's a good thing we got.
I don't know what to do with the total. I think I just leave it there, and I don't have a lot of interest on either side, like instinctively.
Yeah, it's a high unknown game right now. Let's just put it that way. It's a high unknown. Okay, Sunday Night Football next week. Chiefs on the road at Lambeau Field. Numbers Chiefs minus 6.5. Totals 42.5 in the game. Green Bay playing well, playing better offensively for sure. Probably some like positive upside for them on the injury front, considering the amount of players that are going to have 10 days rest for this game. Devondre Campbell was out. Jair Alexander was out. Rudy Ford was out. Darnell Savage designated to return from IR, but didn't play this past week. So some injury upside for Green Bay in this game. Chiefs got out to a 14-0 deficit today, and then they just basically rocked the Raiders afterwards in that game. Still not the same Chiefs team, though, Clive. Feels like it, like even today, I know they win, they cover, still feels like a struggle for them.
I mean, their offense is not what we're used to for them. I kind of don't want to back them to cover by margin on the road to Green Bay, who is Jordan Love is playing better and better each week. I mean, I'm not going to say he's like a top tier quarterback or anything like that, but I mean, he is not the same guy that he was weeks 3 through 6, where he looked completely lost. I'm maybe liking an overlook in this game.
So here's the issue I have. I agree with you. Jordan Love looks good. He did that without the services of Aaron Jones. And like, I didn't think that was going to be possible for them because I don't think highly of AJ Dillon, but the offense looked good. The issue is, how much stock do we put into these last two better offensive performances being the Lions and the Chargers? Because this is a big step up in defensive class. Big step up.
True. I mean, part of it's an eye test. I mean, I know that's not the greatest answer in the world either, but I don't see him making bonehead decisions. I see him making better throws, having better pocket presence. I think he has good protection from his offensive line for the most part too. That helps. I think I'm just souring on Kansas City on both sides of the ball a little bit too.
Yeah. I honestly, for me, a little bit of a cop-out. I mean, it's not really a cop-out. It's just the way I feel. But nothing stands out to me at these prices, personally. I think it's just fine. Like, if you asked me to make a price in this game, I probably would have come out very similar to where we are here, just off the top of my head. I think there's good arguments to be made for both sides. Very good arguments to be made for both sides. But I'm worried about Steve Spagnuolo against a young quarterback and maybe Jordan Love going back to deer in the headlights in this game.
Possible. It's not. It's definitely not out of the question. There's no lock here, like where it's like, oh God, this is a quick. How could this possibly be this price?
Right.
I'm actually interested to see the game.
Yep. So am I. Think it's. I mean, you could say this about any game, like we're going to learn something about the team or whatever. But I actually do think that because of the way that these teams have kind of like been all over the place this season, I think we'll actually learn something about that. Green Bay +7. Josh asks, what about that? That's a little bit more appealing to me. Extra rest. They are looking better. But the last time I'm still like, the last time I wanted to buy into Green Bay, I played them in a primetime game as like a pick 'em at home to Detroit, and they got obliterated. Long time ago. But I'm still concerned about Jordan Love against an actual good defense. And that's what we're going to have here. Our final game of the week is Monday Night Football. And it's an ugly one. Could have been a great one. But instead, we're going to get the Jake Browning experience. 7.5 point dogs on the road at the Jacksonville Jaguars. The total in the game is 40. I don't want Cincinnati at this price. Nope. I want Jacksonville at this price.
Yeah. I think this number is just going to get worse and worse. Jacksonville at 7.5 seems kind of cheap.
I mean, they have a great defense, or at least a solid defense, let's say. Maybe a little bit overrated, but solid defense. If you saw what the Steelers did to the Bengals offense today, they gave them nothing. Now, you maybe have some upside in T. Higgins returning. Offense will look a little bit different for the Bengals. But honestly, it was ugly, man. The Bengals offense, I wasn't exaggerating earlier, people, when I was talking about like their explosive plays and their amount of yardage that came off of tipped balls. It could have been way worse. Browning was terrible. They couldn't do anything. The Bengals, in my opinion, fall into the category. Like, where are they being ranked in market right now? Like, they're in a tier above the bottom teams in the league. I strongly disagree with that. Strongly disagree, Clive.
Yeah, a team total under for Cincinnati might be a nice little play, depending on the price that you get. This is just this is going to be a rough spot for Cincinnati. Do I agree with you what you said that Jacksonville's defense is maybe a touch overrated? Yeah, maybe a little. I'm just not sure how much it matters versus this offense. I think they're a comparable defense to Pittsburgh. Like, they're in the same, region of the country, so to speak. But I can't have any interest in Cincinnati here.
Of note today, Jags left tackle Cam Robinson got hurt, left the game. Walker Little came in his place. That's something for sure. I guess if Cincy's going to put in like an amazing defensive performance, it starts with their defensive line and Trey Hendrickson. But I don't see it. Like, I was willing to fade Cincy today. And honestly, I probably overvalued them today. I probably did. I think that this has like alternate number blowout potential written all over it.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know what number I would need to bet the Bengals in this game. I don't even think I would do it at 10. I honestly don't think I would do it at 10.
Yeah.
I don't. All right. Another episode in the books of Forward Progress. If you did enjoy the episode, let us know. Smash that like button down below. Like always, it goes a long way. Of course, support our sponsor, Pinnacle. If you're in Canada, great sports book. You can bet $3,000 on these games right now at Pinnacle Sportsbook for openers. Just doesn't happen anywhere else, really. And they let you rebet after you bet as well, which is amazing on top of it. Yeah. Appreciate all of you in the chat. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Gil. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, everyone. Scott, Ryan, tons of you. Jerry, Dave Clark, tons of you out there that help and contribute on a weekly basis. We do appreciate all of the support. A reminder for tomorrow, Monday, it's the usual, 2 p.m. Eastern time. G-Stack George, Suma, Cleve TA. Reactions to today, Monday Night Football preview, and they're going to give you their thoughts on some of next week's matchups coming up as well. A little bit of a different perspective. Monday Night Football, right back here tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. It's Bears-Vikings. I'm oddly looking forward to it. Vikings have still been in it. Bears are turning it around. I think it'll be an interesting game, so I'm looking forward to it. Join me here, 8 p.m. Eastern time, live on YouTube on the Forward Progress channel. And if you're listening to this in audio form after the fact, no problem at all. Appreciate you doing that. But just please rate and review 5 stars if you find value in these episodes. For myself, Rob Pizzola, for Clive Bixby, wearing that horribly disgusting New York Giants sweater.
DeVito!
For producer Jason Cooper, who makes things happen behind the scenes. This has been another edition of Forward Progress, presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Enjoy the second half of the football game tonight. Peace out.